Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we're going to talk about YouTube recommending phones, we're going to talk about Alex Jones being deplatformed, and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. Hippity-poppity-poo! Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome back to episode 131 of the BSP. My name is Bandrew. This is what I says. I don't know what that meant. I don't know where that came from. I'm like speaking in tongues right now. But if you do want to skip around, there are timestamps down below. You can find whatever topic that you want to listen to, but I would suggest listening to the entire episode. Two personal things up top. The first one being a reminder or a heads up. This Friday, which is August 17th at 9 p.m. EDT, I'm going to be helping Heather from the Sunshine and Power Cuts podcast close out the Sunshine Summit 2018, and I would love to have all of you stop by and support Heather on this awesome endeavor that she's on right now and help celebrate connections, which is what the entire summit is about. So if you do want more information on that or links to the live streams, which are happening this entire week, go to sunshineandpowercuts.com for that information and those links. Secondly, the experiment is over on the podcastage channel. And I know that sounds drastic, like the world is coming to an end for me, but it's not. What I mean by that is I'm just going to be refocusing on what type of videos I'm uploading there and only going to really be focusing on audio, video, podcasting, YouTube, technical stuff. It's not going to be long-form content anymore. I'm going to stop uploading these entire podcasts and the interviews and all of the stuff like that. I don't want to disrespect my audience anymore. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. I just feel like people subscribe to the podcastage channel mainly for microphone reviews or tutorials or tips and tricks. So when I throw a 45-minute podcast about my thoughts on general tech, people haven't subscribed to that. So that's kind of disrespecting their expectations and their trust in hitting that subscribe button. In terms of the interview series, the creator case study, I really did think that would fit with this channel, but it doesn't seem to be doing well here. So with both of those, the podcast and the creator case study, I decided to spin them off into their own channels so people can subscribe just for those things and get exactly what they expect. So if you do want to subscribe to those channels, the podcast is at youtube.bandrewsays.com. That will just direct you to the YouTube channel because I still don't have the custom domain. Or if you want the interview series, you can go to creatorcasestudy.com and that will also take you directly to the YouTube channel. And this entire statement right here, this is not me saying that I will never promote or share links or clips to those projects on the community tab, or if there is a clip within one of those series, one of those projects that fits really well on the podcastage channel, maybe I will upload it here, but it's not going to be a staple on the channel. It's not going to take the place of a review or a commentary or a analysis of an issue or tips or tricks. It's not going to do that. It would just be on the weekend. It's not going to be a staple here. So I just wanted to thank everybody for sticking with me on those projects while I was experimenting. It was a lot of fun. I think some people found the podcast that didn't know it existed, and others found the podcast and said, oh, this is terrible. I'm not listening to this anymore. And I'm sure we lost some subscribers and some viewers because they said, I didn't subscribe for this. Unsubscribe. So thank you guys again. YouTube.com. No, that's not right. YouTube.bandrewsays.com or creatorcasestudy.com if you do want to follow those projects. Now let's get into the actual news, the meat and potatoes of this episode. First thing, Discord is selling games? So Discord, if you don't know, is a chat service. It's basically you have your own servers, people join, you chat with them. The way that I have always described it is it's like Yahoo chat rooms, but for 2017, 2018, and they're rolling out an employee-curated game store. That's really the entire thing. Right now, it's not going to be available for everybody. I believe it's a test for 50,000 users in Canada. Cool. And I guess if you're a Discord Nitro member, which is the premium, pay $5 a month, you get a couple of extra features. They will have a different game store, and I don't know what the difference will be. I don't know if you get any discounts. I don't know if you get more curated games. I don't know if you get a free game every month. I don't know what the actual service is going to look like, but hey, cool. My initial thought is, hey, this isn't going to work. They're not going to be able to compete with Steam. The way that they are marketing this or justifying it is they're saying that this is going to be more of a community-based gaming experience so you can chat and play with your friends, but I thought Steam was already kind of community-based. I thought you already had friends on Steam. I thought you could play with your friends on Steam. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I haven't said that in a while, and that felt really good to say. Next piece of news, we're going to get right into the YouTube stuff. We got two smaller things up top, and then the rough one. So, YouTube subscription shelf is going to be on the home page, maybe. So currently, YouTube is running a very small experiment where 0.25% of English language users are going to be getting a shelf on their homepage with their subscriptions. So with such a small percentage with this experiment running, we are not going to see any huge increase in our engagement. Our subscriber reach is likely not going to increase much at all. But if we do see this work really well and the YouTube algorithm, or I guess the YouTube team sees an increase in engagement in these 0.25% of English language users for their subscriptions, maybe this will roll out everywhere and subscribers will actually be able to see very easily the content that the channels that they've subscribed to are uploading, which would be very, very nice. And in the Creator Insider channel where I heard this news, they did mention that when they had subscriptions on the homepage, engagement decreased. Now, Tom, who is the host, didn't go into depth on what he meant there. I don't know if they mean engagement on the entire platform decreased or the click-through rate and the engagement on their subscriptions content decreased. I don't know what they mean there. It could mean users only watched their subscriptions and didn't look at all the other stuff on YouTube. It was more of a closed community, a closed ecosystem where their time didn't grow. So that could be what they meant, but we'll have to wait and see again. That's the second time this week. This is feeling so good. I missed saying that. Next, we got YouTube suggesting phones. This is a weird one, but once you get into it, you realize exactly what's happening. So YouTube announced something called the YouTube Signature Device certification thing. So it's nothing more than a certification for phones that will offer the best viewing experience if you want to watch YouTube. So what are the requirements for this certification? You need to be able to offer 360-degree footage viewing, HDR video, high frame rates, I'm guessing that's 60 FPS or higher, 4K decoding, next generation codecs, and a reliable DRM performance. So I think there was 16 or 18 phones included in this initial certification. A couple of them are the Note 9, Pixel 2 XL, OnePlus 6, HTC U12 Plus, but there are no iPhones. Can anybody guess why? Go ahead and leave your best guesses in the comments down below. I'll wait a second. 1,000, 1,000, that was 2 seconds. And the reasoning, I hope you already have your guesses in because I'm going to tell you the answer now. iPhones don't have VP9 video codec, which was developed by Google. So let me elaborate a little bit more and read between the lines for you. You know, let's go ahead and jump into the conspiracy corner here. We haven't done that in a while. Man, this is just a throwback episode. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to the conspiracy corner. So, guess who develops the operating system on all these phones that receive the certification? Or what is the operating system, I should say? Android. Guess who owns YouTube? The answer to both of those questions would be Google. So why do you think that Google would only certify phones that have Android? Because they want to motivate you to buy phones with their operating system. Oh, wow. It's so clear that it's almost not even a conspiracy. Let's get out of here. This doesn't make sense. It's written on the wall. Google wants you to buy more phones with the Android operating system because they own Android and they're going to use their YouTube ownership to market those devices. Ooh, it's such a conspiracy. No, it's not. It's right there. I don't know why I find that so fun, but it really is. Let's get to the difficult topic to talk about, and that would be that YouTube deleted Alex Jones's channel. So this is going to be a very controversial topic. I'm going to try to remain as unbiased as possible, but I know I will get plenty of hate in the comments for covering this topic area. So I apologize ahead of time if I make anybody angry. Not my intention. I am just trying to analyze this story to determine how this impacts other content creators on YouTube or on the internet or any social media platform. So it was not just YouTube that banned Alex Jones. It was also Apple, Facebook, Spotify, and I think a couple of others like Pinterest. So before we get into it, I do want to address one thing, and it's just something that I've been seeing quite frequently on social media, and it would be that this is infringing on Alex Jones's free speech. And I will say I disagree with that 100%. These companies are privately owned. I saw somebody posting on social media with a stock listing for one of these companies saying, privately owned, huh? Just because it's privately owned doesn't mean it can't be publicly traded. They're privately owned but publicly traded, so people can buy stock. They can own it. The government doesn't own me. I am a private person. So I am privately owning any of these companies. Privately owned, publicly traded. Very different. I just needed to point that out. So therefore, none of us content creators have an inalienable right to post on these platforms. And thank you to the user who corrected me last week for saying inalienable right to post on these platforms. This is under the current treatment of these companies, though. There are some interesting conversations or videos that have been coming out. Two that I will link in the show notes and description are from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Jimmy Dore, I think it was. And then there's another really interesting and fun video to watch from Hank Green. I think the title is, I think I'm living in a corporate autocracy, something like that. It's a really good video and fun to watch. So to give a full picture of this story, I'm going to read statements from 4 of these companies, so bear with me. This may be tedious, but I think it's important to understand where they're all coming from. So YouTube came out with a statement that said, when users violate these policies repeatedly, like our policies against hate speech and harassment or our teams prohibiting circumvention of our enforcement measures, not issues, we terminate their accounts. So if I'm not mistaken, this is in regards to Alex Jones having a strike on his channel, which would limit his ability to live stream, but then other people restreaming his Periscope live stream, or maybe he intentionally live streamed on other channels. So he was circumventing the decision from YouTube's team to give him a strike and limit his live streaming capabilities. That's my understanding of it. Secondly, for Facebook, the way that I read their post, which I will link in the description down below, is that the pages were unpublished, which is very different than being fully deleted. So when a page is unpublished, there's an appeals process that the page owner or admins can submit to, and if the appeal fails, then the page would be fully deleted. But if they succeed, the pages will get reinstated. Currently, my understanding is Alex Jones's pages are just unpublished, so they can still go through the appeals process. Now, for their justification of taking down these pages, Facebook said it was for glorifying violence and using dehumanizing language to describe people who are transgender, Muslims, and immigrants. For Apple, they removed the postings of 4 out of the 5 podcasts that Alex Jones puts out, and they said, podcasts that violate these guidelines are removed from our directory, making them no longer searchable or available for downloading or streaming. We believe in representing a wide range of views, so long as people are respectful to those with differing opinions. And lastly, Spotify said, we take reports of hate content seriously and review any podcast episode or song that is flagged by our community. Due to repeated violations of Spotify's prohibited content policies, the Alex Jones Show has lost access to the Spotify platform. Alex, welcome to the club. None of us have access to the Spotify platform because it's useless. It's garbage. I don't think 1%, 2%, maybe 5% of listeners are from Spotify. So welcome to the club, bud. And then I wanted to include this because I think this is interesting. There was one holdout of the big social media platforms, and that was Twitter. Twitter did not ban Alex Jones or any of his podcast accounts. And what Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO, I believe, of Twitter, he said, "We didn't suspend Alex Jones or InfoWars yesterday. We know that's hard for many, but the reason is simple. He hasn't violated our rules. We'll enforce it if he does, and we'll continue to promote a healthy conversational environment by ensuring tweets aren't artificially amplified." So after reading all of those statements, I see three possibilities. I'm sure there are more, but I see three possibilities in my mind for why these platforms took down Alex Jones and removed him and are limiting his reach. The first one would be that these platforms were being pressured too much by the public, so they felt it was necessary in order to maintain their current user base or limit a loss of users. So essentially maintaining their bottom line and limiting a potential loss. Second, they don't want to make changes to the algorithm in order to limit the distribution of controversial content because controversial content is a very big moneymaker. And since Alex Jones is the leader of the conspiratorial content, maybe he doesn't accept that, maybe people don't agree with me, but he is a big figurehead for conspiratorial content or controversial content. Maybe they banned him to say, hey, look, we actually do care. We're listening. We do care. But they still allow smaller channels that aren't as well known to exist, ultimately allowing the companies to still profit off of engagement on conspiratorial and controversial content. So that's the second one. The third one would be these companies do actually care. Oh my God, I cracked myself up. The companies care. Yeah. I don't think the third one is true at all. And that's not me saying that the people at the companies are bad people or that they all agree with Alex Jones. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the corporate entity as a whole likely doesn't care about what information is being shared on the platform. They only care about engagement, ad impressions, and dollars. That's what they really care about. That's all I'm trying to say. So number 3, out the window. I don't agree with that at all, but I saw it as an option, so I included it. So let's analyze the first option. And that one seems kind of bothersome to me, but it's very difficult to parse as well. It's a very, this entire topic area is it's a powder keg. You say one wrong thing, you're going to get torn down. So I probably shouldn't even be talking about this, but the first one is very scary to me. So the reason I say that is because I understand how important all of these platforms, maybe Spotify excluded, are in allowing someone to grow an audience in this day and age. Not necessarily maintain an audience, but if you want to develop an audience and grow an audience, all of these platforms are very, very important. Without YouTube, without Twitter, without Facebook, without all these places, it would be very difficult from scratch to grow an audience. So I do understand that. So if a very vocal minority has the ability to remove someone's platform because they don't agree with their viewpoint, that could be very easy to abuse. Let's say get 100 people together and say, you know what, we really don't like this guy. Let's each make 10 accounts and start attacking him, start attacking the company, questioning their Americanness. I don't know. Doing something like that. It would be very easy to abuse if that were the case. Now, I think that anyone and everyone should have a platform to share their thoughts and ideas unless they are advocating violence or causing physical harm. That's exactly what the U.S. law says about free speech. Well, I haven't read it, but my understanding of it, I should say, is you have the right to free speech unless you are directly inciting violence. So, for instance, you can't go into a fire theater, a movie theater, and scream fire because that could lead to direct physical harm or physical violence. Now, the second option seems much more likely to me, and that would be that these companies are publicly traded, so they have shareholders to answer to. Keep that in mind. So I am sure that 95% of those shareholders would not support any action regardless of how socially responsible it is if it decreases the bottom line and hurts the stock price. Why would these companies actively alienate a huge number of their audience by censoring somebody, knowing that it will a lot of those users will say, you know what, I don't want to use this platform anymore because they don't care for my type. They don't care for people with my ideals. So why would I support this platform? I'm out of here. I don't see any publicly traded company with shareholders and CEOs who love having power saying, yeah, let's go ahead and censor this entire group of people and alienate a large number of our users. I don't see that happening because it seems like a recipe for decreased revenue, and when a company doesn't do well, all the people in power or some of the people in power will get replaced. And like I said, CEOs and people in power like power. So they're going to do what they can to stay in their position. So let's talk about how this affects content creators. I'm going to say, maybe people will disagree with me here too. Unless you're a very famous political commentator or a conspiracy theorist in this spotlight, I don't think this will have very much impact on you at all. I will point out that on Friday, this was interesting to see. H3H3 Podcast was live streaming on YouTube, and they received a strike on YouTube, which meant they couldn't live stream anymore. And I think it was for showing an Alex Jones clip or talking about Alex Jones. But I didn't comment on it at that time because I wanted to see what happened. And the next day, the strike got removed so they could stream again. So I didn't do much more research into it than that. So if there is anything interesting or eye-opening about this instance, I'll go ahead and discuss it on next week. But I wanted to point out that we did see a very prominent channel get taken down because they either included an Alex Jones clip or were talking about him, but that strike got reversed. And secondly, I'm just going to use this as a time to remind creators that you should have an external hub that you own, like a domain. So for instance, if you just go out and promote youtube.com/podcastage, hey, youtube.com/podcastage, what if YouTube comes out and deletes my channel? Nobody's going to be able to find where I am. So instead of promoting youtube.com/podcastage, maybe I could say, hey, go check out www.bandrewscott.com. And then that has links to all of the projects I'm working on, the podcast, the YouTube, the Twitters, the Twitch, everything. That would be a much better way to safeguard yourself a little bit, give yourself a little bit of insurance in case you are controversial and you do think you may be censored or taken down. Create a hub to direct people to, so if you get taken down on one of these platforms, you can just redirect everybody to a new place. That's the piece of advice that I will end with there. And I do want to hear from you guys here, though. But before I say that, or I guess I already said it, so I can't take it back, please be civil about this in the comments. Let's not try to get into too many fights. Let's have a civil discourse discussing how this will impact creators. Let's just talk about that. So do you think these companies are correct for doing this? Do you think they're wrong? How do you think this will affect creators? Do you think it will have a big negative impact? Who do you think will be affected by it next, if anybody? And do you think these companies, just out of the interest of my own self, do you think these companies are doing it because they actually care or because they just care about that bottom line? Let me know in the comments down below. And like I said, I'll go ahead and link a couple of stories and videos in the show notes down below. Next, we got the last piece of news, and it is security news, and it would be that the FCC lied about being DDoS attacked. So during the process of taking comments on the revocation of net neutrality or the reversal of net neutrality, the FCC stated that they received or underwent, I don't know what the correct terminology would be, but they had a DDoS attack on their service. And if you don't know what DDoS is, it's distributed denial of service. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just think of it as overwhelming a server by reloading a page over and over and over again, but it's a lot of people doing it, and it could just be somebody taking over a bunch of people's computers, I think, and attacking a certain site and reloading it over and over again until the server gets overloaded and crashes. That was a terrible explanation, Bandrew. You're a dope. Okay, so the traffic that crashed the FCC server was apparently not a DDoS attack, but it was driven by John Oliver's show Last Week Tonight. Big surprise. I think everybody knew that when it happened. Oh, John Oliver made a bunch of sites that redirected to the FCC's forum and said, leave a comment. And everybody did it. And oh, a big spike in traffic. No, it was an attack. It was an attack. Bullcrap. So the thing that makes this even more egregious is a producer from Last Week Tonight informed the FCC that they would be running a segment about the FCC a week or so prior to it airing, so the FCC would have time to make preparations and ensure that they had enough bandwidth or enough server space, I don't know exactly what they would need, to make sure the site would stay up and people could leave comments. They didn't do anything. I guess a bunch of people didn't hear about this. So why does this matter? If I remember correctly, the narrative that was put out there was that they would be ignoring comments left in this forum because it was spam or harassment or it was part of this DDoS attack. So the comments didn't matter. That's if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if they did ignore the comments opposing the revocation of net neutrality, could that be an issue? Could that be an issue? Let's go ahead and use this as an excuse to ignore all these comments opposing what we're trying to do. You see the issue here? So I'm going to go ahead and link a letter from the Office of the Inspector General in the comments if you want to read more about that, or in the show notes. I'm not going to go more into that. Let's jump to TV and movies of the week. I did not do it last week, but this week we got a good one. It's going to be the 1931 edition of Dracula. So I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the story of Dracula, so we won't focus on that too much here, but I do want to point out some stuff that stuck out to me while watching this. The first was the almost complete lack of music in the film and the long stretches without speaking. So what this accomplished is it causes this sense of anxiety throughout. Now, would that have worked in 1931? I don't know. But being how fast cuts are nowadays, how much noise is always going on in films, when there's long stretches of silence and no music, your brain has been trained to expect these things. So when it's not there, it just, oh no, something bad is going to happen the entire time. The tension just, it hits you. So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing is probably due to some technical limitation, but there was this constant underlying hiss or white noise, which led to this additional anxiety. Just think of having white noise just blasting in your ears for an hour and 20 minutes. That, mixed with the silence, mixed with the no music, your heart's racing the entire time, and I think it was completely unintentional. Probably both of those things were due to technical limitations, the white noise and the hiss, and the lack of score. Probably beyond their technical capabilities in 1931. The third thing was Bela Lugosi's performance. He plays Dracula, and his performance is just haunting. He is such a creepy son of a gun. Just from his eyes, he's somehow able to portray a complete lack of a soul and a desire to eat somebody, or I guess drink their blood. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how actors do that, but just looking at his eyes and how they change and how he looks at other actors, you can tell what's going on in his mind, or what he's making you believe is going on in his mind, because I don't think Bela Lugosi actually wanted to drink somebody's blood. And then fourth would be Dwight Frye's performance, and he played Renfield. He was spot on. So Renfield is a crazy person, and he plays the character who he makes you believe that he's actually insane, which is why I love films like There Will Be Blood so much. The performance makes you believe that they are actually insane. His schizophrenic performance encapsulated his descent, his slow descent into madness, where he wants to consume blood. He wants to drink human blood, but he promised his master that he wouldn't, and he's just consuming rat blood. You see his descent to madness, and he doesn't want to be that guy. It's fascinating to watch and really well done. So this was my first time seeing this, but I finally understand how and why this film is so iconic and so highly regarded. It's what, 80 years? 80 years later? Not 80, 75 years later, and it still holds up. So if you're looking for a classic horror film, would highly recommend it. Get ready for some anxiety and some tension and some technical limitations that may drive you batty. So there you have it. That was my movie recommendation of the week. Now let's jump to what you had to say. The first comment comes from Art Johnson. He says, regarding the TSA oversight, you didn't mention how these folks selected for special attention by the TSA. That's kind of a critical element. Are they randomly following flyers about? Are they specific behaviors they are keying in on? Or are these known suspects of some kind? Kind of makes a difference. So Art, thank you very much for the question. Very good question. And I forgot to look this up. I believe I read, I may be wrong, and this is probably very dumb of me to put this out there without researching it further, but I believe they are following people who have known connections to people of interest. So let's say you've spoken to somebody who is a person of interest from the US government. Maybe they're on a do not fly list. I don't know exactly what determines if they are a person of interest, but if you have contact with them, if you are a known contact of them, that will be a trigger for them to potentially follow you. And given there's only 35 people being followed, I doubt any of us would be followed, but it's still kind of concerning. What if 5 years ago you were a roommate of somebody who ends up being a person of interest? That could be bad. I don't want to be followed, but there you have it. I'm sorry I forgot to do a little bit more research. I've been swamped this week. But thank you for trying to keep me honest, or keeping me honest, I should say. The next comment comes from Frosty Gamer. He says, in the situation with the TSA, wishing for a Goldilocks zone between protection versus invasion of privacy is not a bad thing, but for individuals who want to do harm will always want to exploit any weakness they can find. So security groups are still working to improve their craft. But yeah, us normal people will always want to find issues. It has to be a group effort between critics and security officers for protection of the entire population. Frosty, I could not agree with you more here. It is such a fine line between invasion of privacy and protection. I just constantly see articles about how ineffective the TSA is, and that's not me criticizing any TSA agents. I think it's just the policies in place or the tools at your disposal or the funding that you have. It could be a number of different things affecting the effectiveness of the TSA program. Now, that's not me saying that they have never once stopped anything bad from happening. They have, and I appreciate them doing that 100%. Is that worth the billions of dollars we've poured into it? Maybe. Maybe it is. I'm not an actuary. I'm not going to assign value to people's lives, but I am happy that people were not harmed because the TSA was there and they found the shoe bomber or the underwear bomber or any of these clowns. I should call them evil people, not clowns. I guess there's no real difference there. Clowns are like evil people, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. You are 100% right. Very fine line there. And I think a communication between security and the public should occur, but the problem with that would be once the security folks start to illustrate ideas about what they have, then that gives the evil people, the clowns, a heads up about how they could avoid detection. So it's a sticky situation. It's a lose-lose, I think. If they come out and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, then people can work around it. But if they don't, then it feels like an invasion of privacy for stuff. I don't know the answer here. I don't know the answer. It's a rough situation. But thank you very much for that, and you are 100% right in my opinion. Last comment comes from Berserkism. Logitech buying an audio company? They have owned Ultimate Ear since 2008. UE makes some excellent IEMs, and the broader product line such as Bluetooth speakers and headphones like the UE6000, etc. are very, very good. So, thank you for pointing that out. I did read that they owned UE, but I never really looked into them, or I've never used their IEMs, and I've never used the UE Boom series of Bluetooth speakers. But I saw a tweet. Maybe I'll go ahead and screen capture that and include it right here. I saw a tweet from somebody who works at Logitech, and it was saying, we welcome Blue to the family. Look at what's in our Logitech lobby, the headquarters lobby. And it was a case with the blue Snowball and the blue Yeti. Now, what that tells me is the speculation that they really only care about the lower end stuff could possibly be true. If you have something like the blue bottle, which is a $4,000 interchangeable capsule system, which is beautifully designed, really well manufactured, and sounds, I'm guessing, pretty dang good, Why would you not include that, but rather include this ugly looking ball that sounds okay, but it's $30 or $40 or $50? Why would you include that? That's not a good showcase of the company that you just acquired. So that's my take on it. But thank you for pointing that out, that UE is owned by them, and letting me know that you do have used their IEMs and you think they are good. So thank you very much, Berserkism. Appreciate you. Now, let's go ahead and get to my favorite part of the podcast, the Ask Bandrew segment. Okay, reminder, guys, if you got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com. I may answer them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. We got a first email from Dad and the Jiu-Jitsu Kid. Awesome name. Hi, Bandrew. How are you? I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate you asking. My 13-year-old son and I have a podcast, and we just launched our 7th episode and are loving our experience together. One of the things while I'm editing is all of the uhs and ums that I am using. Mostly it's because I'm speaking, monitoring the recording on my computer, and listening to our guest or conversation with my son. I'm basically listening and looking at my guest and using my peripheral vision to keep an eye on the computer. Oh, it's so much stuff. I haven't had any complaints, but I asked my wife to listen closely for the uhs and ums, and she did say that she does feel like it is overused. Even though it may not be extremely noticeable, I can't stand listening while in post. Any tips or ideas that you have used or heard? Any recommendations? Love the show. Keep up the work, Mark. Mark, thank you very much for the email. I appreciate you, and I think you're on the right path, man. First off, I want to give you a little quick round of applause where you are finding stuff that you think is subpar about your podcast and improving it before you get complaints. That's something that a lot of people don't tend to do. They just say, oh, we're done. We're not even editing it. Throw it out there. Let's let the garbage fly. You are saying, I'm going to find ways to improve this and get better and better. You're on the right track there. So Mark, let's dive a little bit further in here. The first piece of advice that before I say that, I just want to say that is an awesome way to spend time with your son. And I just think that's awesome that you found a good hobby that you and your son can participate in together, because a lot of parents don't do that either. You're killing it, Mark. Spending time with your son and improving your podcast without complaints. So, couple pieces of advice. See, I should be editing all this stuff out. I'm not going to. I'm part of the garbage team. So, I think as podcasters, we fear silence, but we shouldn't. Now, what I mean by that is you should embrace the silence. So instead of thinking, well, I'm trying to think of something to say here, let the silence sit there. So I'm trying to think of something to say, it's just something, that's a lot worse sounding than, I got to think of something to say here. It could be that I just don't know what to say. So there's two things there. In real world conversation with people, you're not going to fill every gap, every space in thought. Every time you're trying to come up with something with an you're going to have time to breathe. You're going to have time to think. It's more natural. So not only will your podcast sound more natural, but it is significantly easier to edit out a 5-second or a 3-second silence and shorten that up to tighten it up. As opposed to, I just think that it's very difficult to cut out the ums there and make that sound natural, because the words, the yas, ums, it's all those words are smushed together. So it takes a lot of work to get those ums out and make it sound natural. It's likely not going to sound natural, which will be more distracting than a 1-second silence. Don't fear the silence. Embrace it. Embrace the darkness, Mark. Embrace it. Second piece of advice. I think you're doing everything right here to improve. What I mean by that is you are editing the podcast and you're noticing how many times you use these crutch words. So as you do more edits, you are essentially training yourself through negative reinforcement to not use the word. So what I mean by that is when you're in the process of editing, every single time you say you probably get a little cringe factor in the back of your mind saying, oh, God dang it. Now it's going to take me 5 minutes to edit that out and make it sound natural. So you have this negative reinforcement happening where you're like, every single time I say or that happens, I'm cringing, and I'm going to slowly work that out of my vocabulary. So by you editing it, you not offloading that to somebody else, you noticing it, asking for advice or input from a third party, and then the third piece of input here is that if you're only on episode 7, I would say don't sweat it too much. I think you're being a little bit too hard on yourself. And the reason that I'm saying that is I don't think the majority of podcast listeners find a podcast that's on episode 7 and say, oh my God, this is not the highest quality like NPR. I'm not going to listen anymore. I don't think anybody really does that. So I think that if you allow yourself time to progress, maybe by episode 15 or 20 or 25 or 30, you will have removed the ums and the yeahs and the uhs from your vocabulary while podcasting, and your audience will be a little bit more invested because they saw you progress and saw you grow through the entire podcasting process. So Mark, thank you very much for the question. I hope that helped at all. And like I said, it's awesome that you're podcasting with your kid. That is super tight. Second email comes from Luke. Dear Bandrew, in recent months, I've started my podcast aptly named Luke Who's Talking. I love that podcast name so much. And I'm already thinking about future equipment upgrades, mainly the addition of an interface or portable recorder like a Zoom. I've used Zoom products in the past. I would appreciate any input on what way you think I should go. An interface would likely be a more budget-friendly solution, but a portable recorder has the option of being, well, portable. And I also believe some of Zoom's models like the H5, for example, can be used as an interface. One thing I want for sure is the device to have 2 inputs so I can have a second microphone, and also for it to have enough power to run more upmarket microphones, just as a safety net for if and when I upgrade my Q2U. So Luke, awesome question, my dude. Thank you kindly. Side note to everybody listening or watching, Luke runs the Luke Who's Talking podcast, which he mentioned in the email, and I love that name so much. If I'm not mistaken, Luke, correct me. This name is attributed to Tim from the podcast's Discord server. When he posted that in the chat, I could be wrong though. I died laughing. I was like, that's a perfect name for it. Luke, you got your podcast name. Go with that. And it's a very fun podcast. So if you're looking for a mate, just chatting it up, go check that out. And second reminder of the episode, Luke is going to be a guest on Heather's 2018 Sunshine Summit this week. So go to sunshineandpowercuts.com and check out when Luke's going to be on. I am so excited to see Luke on that podcast or on that the summit. It's going to be so much fun. Luke, you're killing it, mate. So back to the question. Portable recorder or interface. Let me tell you why I personally stopped using the Zoom interfaces and portable recorders. I had the H6 and the U22, I believe it is. Let's pull this out. The U44. I had the U44, which is an interface, and the H6, which could be an interface or a portable recorder. The reason, the preamps are so noisy. Very, very noisy. I think you get 45 decibels of gain, and the line noise or the noise floor was just a bit too high for my liking. A bit too high. So when I was using the H6 as a portable recorder to record and produce somebody's podcast in a third-party location, I would be running the SM58s. I would have to get above 75% or maybe 80%. And there was just this constant shh in the background, and it was maddening. So you'd have to run it through noise removal software. So what I'm going to go ahead and say here is a similarly priced interface that I think would be a better option, at least for my use case, and I'll give you some situations to consider, would be something like the ID14. I believe that's a 2XLR 2 preamp interface from Audient. And Audient's preamps are just mind-bogglingly good. They are so incredibly quiet. They don't have the highest gain, but the noise floor is low enough so in post you could boost it up and you're not going to be bringing up too much of a noise floor. Now, obviously, that does have its downsides to a portable recorder because you will need to have a laptop or you will need to have your phone to connect the ID4 to. So, you're going to have to ask yourself when deciding this, how frequently will I be recording away from a computer? How frequently do I need to have a very portable device that I don't need any external device to record to? That's where you're going to have to make your own decision here. I'll let you know, the Zoom is very, very convenient. The H6, the H5, very convenient to take with you wherever you want and record. You don't need to bring a laptop, nothing. Super convenient. Batteries last a decent amount of time. You could get by with adding a couple cloud lifters, but then you're adding $300 to your, that's too much for the H6. So that's where you're at. I would personally go with an actual interface because it has better preamps like the ID14 or maybe it's the ID22. Can't recall. One of those two interfaces similarly priced to the H5 or H6. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm rambling now and this is not fun for you to listen to. I hope that gave you some insight. Zoom preamps, noisy. Audient preamps, not noisy, but less portable. H6, very portable. H5, very portable. Can be used as interface, cannot be used as portable recorder. I don't know, man. I'm rambling. I appreciate you sending that in. I hope that gave you some help. If you got any more questions, send me an email or tweet at me or hit me up in Discord. I'm sorry. I just don't know what's happening. I'm losing my mind here, man. Okay, I'm just gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you coming by and checking out the podcast on the Bandrew Says podcast channel. I believe that's where I'm uploading this. Maybe it's on the podcast. I don't know what's happening anymore. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye.